joining us for another episode of This is Revolution. As usual, we're broadcasting from Oakland, California. And this episode is taken from one of our Foreign Policy Thursday episodes that we just recently did with Black Agenda Report and Black Alliance for Peace's Ajamu Baraka. He was also the 2016 Green Party vice presidential candidate. And he is a comrade, of course, of co-host Pascal Robert. So this was a very special show for him. For me as well. I was not very well versed in Colombian history as far as the civil unrest that's been going on for decades. And Ajamu, and also on the show was Charo Mina Rojas, a fellow activist. They gave us some good historical context. I think I say this in the show, and I don't know how often I say this as I'm describing these episodes, but there is a lot of research that goes into each one we produce. It's not as if we kind of spitball a topic and then just start pontificating on what we think is going on and just basing it off our feelings. We have to have kind of a decently deep historical dive. And of course, there's a reason why we bring on quote-unquote experts, people that have more knowledge on these situations, people that have studied and written great scholarship on a lot of these topics. So this episode in particular, again, was one that Pascal and I both did not have a lot of background on. And so when these intro videos that, unfortunately you guys that are listening to the audio only don't get to see, they take a long time because I have to actually pour through quite a bit of footage. And I try to make them interesting by kind of centering each video off archival footage, which is harder to come by than you think. Archival footage that isn't just watermarked up, and it's mildly costly. But this was a very illuminating episode, and then we got pretty deep on the patron-only bonus end that Ajamu joined us for. He told us originally, hey man, I'll give you 20 minutes. And he ended up giving us a full-on hour. It was great. It was great. I look forward to having him back. That being said, if you want to watch these shows while they're happening in real time and participate and ask questions, then you have to watch it on either Facebook, Periscope, via Twitter, or our favorite, YouTube. Oh, also Twitch. What am I talking about? We're also on Twitch. YouTube.com/This is Revolution Podcast. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We do this. And if you want to be a part of the bonus patron half and call in and ask your questions, well, then you got to become a patron. Wherever you are listening to this show, there are links in the description to our Patreon, but patreon.com/Bitter Lake Presents. We definitely have a pay what you want to be a patron. So, that being said, I don't want to take up too much time. Wherever you're listening to this show, please hit the subscribe button so you can get notified. We've added a day for these audio-only podcasts. Since we do the show 3 days a week, we are putting out 3 audio-only podcasts a week. So you guys want it, we are going to give it to you. Also, when this comes out on Sunday, June 27th, my co-host Pascal Robert will be on Kenzo Shibata's show, Class Time with Kenzo Shibata. Facebook. YouTube.com/Class Time with Kenzo Shibata. It should be a doozy. Kenzo has been also helping us out on our Saturday crew. He is another member in the mix. Pascal also, for patrons, on June 30th, we'll be doing an Ask Pascal live stream. I'm looking forward to that, more so than he is. No, it's not a stump, Pascal. It's just have a conversation. And he kept, emphasizing today on the show. I'm recording this June 26th on Saturday early evening. He kept emphasizing, hey, it's a conversation. And he's right. It is. It is a conversation with my good friend Pascal Robert. And we did we need to stop calling it Nerd Night. We're just going to call it Pop Culture Night, because ultimately that's what it is. We have a conversation about pop culture that usually just twists and turns in all these different directions. But the original concept was we were going to examine Paul Verhoeven's Total Recall and kind of go down the list of his better movies in the early 90s and late 80s. RoboCop, Total Recall, Starship Troopers. They told me I wasn't allowed to bring up Showgirls. So, like, the messages in those movies, you look at a movie like Total Recall, and you think about people like Elon Musk just with a heart on to colonize Mars, and you think about the libertarian zeal in people like Elon Musk and even Peter Thiel. And I believe in my soul that they had the opportunity to privatize air. They would privatize air. This is not a war. This is revolution. And on that note, I'm going to get out of the way. This is Ajamu Baraka from Black Agenda Report, Black Alliance for Peace, and Charo Mina Rojas, and I am out. Hello and welcome. Happy Thursday, everyone. We have a very, very special show. I feel like whenever Pascal gets to reunite with his Black Agenda Report brethren, it's a great show. He gets excited for the show. He's been getting me excited for the show. Had me go down a rabbit hole. We've been doing these intro videos for every show. And tonight we're going to be talking about Colombia and the situation out there, the uprisings in Colombia right now. And one thing I will say before I even bring on Pascal is, and I'm sure you guys know this, you don't get a lot of Colombia news. You get Venezuela news all day long, but you don't get a lot of Colombia news. So to go down rabbit holes and try to find good footage and good stuff for the video was a bit of a challenge. And also, before I bring Pascal in, I want to give a shout out to good friend and fellow guitar player, Todd Buller of Bitter Lake, my bandmate. Happy birthday. But that being said, let me bring in my homie, my dog. He is the fiercest leftist Haitian from New York in Miami. He is my homie, my dog, Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings to my comrade, my brother, Jason Miles.
So before we bring our wonderful guests in, let's play this intro video. I don't know if you got a chance to see it. And I will say this, something happened on the upload when I put it up on YouTube. So you guys missed the very end of it. So you're going to get to see the unedited. This is the director's cut, if you will.
In his inauguration speech, the newly elected president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, had said, "To our sister republics south of the border, we offer a special pledge to convert our good words to good deeds in a new alliance for progress, to assist free men and free governments in casting off the chains of poverty." Now, that alliance is in the process of being forged as President and Mrs. Kennedy step onto Latin American soil.
This program is at the heart of the Alianza para el Progreso, for no real progress is possible unless the benefits of increased prosperity are shared by the people themselves.
The president then invites Mrs. Kennedy to address the audience.
Me alegro haber podido acompañar mi marido a Venezuela. La distinción y la importancia de vuestra cultura ya me eran conocidos. También me han impresionado vuestros esfuerzos por mejorar las condiciones de vida de vuestro pueblo. Yo sé que no hay esposa, ni madre, ni padre, ni familia en este continente que pueda conformarse hasta que los habitantes de todos nuestros pueblos tengan oportunidades de trabajo bien remunerado, pueden vivir decentemente y recibir enseñanza. Estas cosas deberían estar al alcance de todos y no limitarse a unos pocos afortunados.
Currently in Colombia, protesters are facing brutal reprisals by the U.S.-backed regime. Like in many countries in the global south, the austerity imposed state policies to protect the ravages of capitalism post the 2008 crash are causing citizens from broad sectors of society to form coalitions to challenge government agendas to bleed the poor even further to cover for the abuses of capital that have brought forth the push towards austerity. On this episode, we will investigate Colombia's battle for economic humanity. This is Revolution.
We know we won't see victory, but we are convinced we have to fight for the poor people of Colombia and for the poor people all over the world.
It's amazing that, that after almost 40 years of war today, the guerrillas are stronger than ever before. The Colombian army is stronger and more powerful than ever before. And the paramilitaries are stronger and more powerful than ever before. We have three mighty war machines that feed off of each other and that will continue to escalate and will continue to grow. And the worst part of this is that the prime targets are civilian population.
Jason, audio.
I keep forgetting I'm muting myself. You want to bring in our first guest, Pascal?
Our first guest will be the former vice presidential candidate for the Green Party in 2016, leader of the Black Alliance for Peace, which I am a member, editor, one of the major editors of Black Agenda Report, longtime organizer, political activist, Black revolutionary, Ajamu Baraka.
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And also, we doubled up today. We got a packed house. Charo Mina Rojas is a Colombia human rights defender with nearly 30 years of activism with the Black Communities Process, PCN. Mina Rojas has served as National Coordinator of Advocacy and Outreach in the U.S. for PCN. She was part of the Ethnic Commission that worked to ensure the inclusion of the ethnic chapter in the final peace agreement, which contains specific provisions to ensure the protection and advancement of Afro-descendant collective rights. Currently, she coordinates the Afro-Colombian Initiative for Gender and Peace Justice. Mina Rojas has authored several articles on the plight of Afro-Colombian women and women in Latin America, and has provided expert testimony on human rights before the committees of the United States Congress, Inter-American Commission for Human Rights, and various organs of the United Nations, including the United Nations Security Council, where she became the first Afro-descendant woman to testify as such before the United Nations Security Council on racial and gender violence against Black Afro-descendant women in Colombia and Latin America. She is Charo Mina Rojas. Thank you.
Welcome.
We're
going to, for our audience who knows, we get straight down to the gravy with these questions with our show. I would like Charo and Ajamu, either one of you can take this question, and it's going to be a general question. Can you put what is going on in Colombia in historical context and contemporary context relative to the current Biden administration, the history of America's relationship with Colombia, the rise of the reactionary right-wing administration that's a tool of the United States, and the fears and the paranoia about the pink tide in South America and austerity overall? I know that's a loaded question, but I know you guys came prepared. But please, I will defer to you both, and let's have it.
Well, I could start, but let me, before I get into that very complex question, that actually has about 4 questions in it. Let me just say how happy that I am, and I'm sure that Charo is also, to be part of this conversation. This is a very exciting new initiative. I have had a chance to catch a number of them, and you all do get right into it and get into the complexities of issues. It's so vitally important today when so many people are trying to figure out what's going on and trying to develop themselves theoretically in order to engage in effective practice. So I really want to salute you and Jason and this fantastic program. Now,
thank you.
The question is we have to unpack some of this because it's a lot there. You know, of course, you can't understand the contemporary situation in Colombia without contextualizing it. The national strike that emerged back in April 28th, seems like a long time ago now. But, you know, what emerged with this national strike wasn't just a rebellion because someone's rights were violated or whatever. The rebellion or the strike was as a consequence of the culmination, the sharpening of the contradictions in this country that have developed really over the last 40 years. And when we say that, we say that with knowledge that in some ways that's really that unique, in the sense that most of what we see unfolding here in Latin America, on the continent, and even in North America, in terms of the grinding and deepening socioeconomic and political crisis we find, all have emanated from more than 40 years of neoliberal policies. So when the Duque government attempted to impose on the working class measures that would theoretically bail out the country on the backs of the working class because of the COVID crisis and because of the economic fragile nature of the economy in Colombia, by imposing new taxes on things like food and gas and utilities. The people had enough, and they said, no, we're not going for this. And so there was a committee pulled together, and they put together and unlike, unfortunately, in the U.S., when we attempt to try to organize what we call a national strike, and all we can really pull off is some people on the internet, on social media, holding up a sign saying, I'm on strike. In Colombia, they shut the country down. Okay, nothing moved. All right, this is serious business down here because it's serious conditions, and because you have a sophisticated and politicized nation that's organized, then you see the kind of political opposition and actions that we saw that started on April 28th when they shut the nation down. Now, of course, we're going to talk about this some more. There was a reaction from the state, because while the people said, "Oh no, we ain't going for it," the state said, "Oh yes, you are," and you all can go through the streets, but we're going to pay a price. And so there was massive and ferocious repression from the Colombian. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. But it's important to note that, this is on the heels of a peace process that theoretically was negotiated, and terms had come to be put in place that ended one of the longest conflicts on the planet. And people thought that there would be a new day in this country, but of course that didn't happen. This also happened at the end of a process in which, as a consequence of the conflict, you have massive numbers of people who were displaced. Many people might not know that Colombia has one of the largest populations of displaced people on the planet, and a disproportionate number of those folks, in fact, Black people, African people, who ended up in places like Cali and even in Bogota, okay, as a consequence of the war. And so all of these various conditions came together: the war, the peace process that the government would not really recognize when the new government came in place in 2018, the consequences of the intensification of neoliberal policies. They all came together, and there was that explosion that started on April 28th. And what we saw in Colombia was a particular manifestation of that in Colombia. But this explosion and this rebellion against neoliberalism is something that's been happening throughout the region. And that's how we had the so-called pink tide. And that's why many of us said that, what they thought that they had pushed back the so-called pink tide. I never liked that term anyway. That when there was a reaction, and when there was going to be a response, that it would no longer be pink, but it'll probably be red. And I'll stop there.
Sister Charo, would you like to continue?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I actually want to thank you for the invitation. I feel very honored to have the opportunity to be here, sharing with you, sharing with Ajamu and the people that is connected. So thank you for this, because when you start the program, effectively you say, who heard about Colombia? And I have to say also, who heard about Black people in Colombia, Afro-descendant people in Colombia. So this is a very important space for us, an opportunity. I appreciate it. And in terms of your multi-pack question, I think that Ajamu laid out a very important context. I will just add that effectively, we are in a country that has been under this so-called internal armed conflict for over 50 years now. Then there was a big effort from civil society to push for this dialogue. There happened a peace accord signed in 2016 with a series of, it wasn't perfect, but it has pretty important points there that will allow to this country perhaps to move on in certain, particularly what is the situation with the rural areas in the whole agricultural and productive sector, if you will, part of which is located in Afro-descendant territories that some of them are in collective property. So we are under all this situation of war. We have a peace accord. It's a very promising opportunity, particularly for those communities that have been under all this violence, communities encroached by paramilitaries. And then comes this right-wing government that completely turned the back to the peace accord, that opens up to privatization, to the private sector, start ignoring agreements, ignoring responsibilities, and then comes COVID. And with the combination of all these elements between tremendous levels of violence in the territories, many human rights defenders killed, comes this situation with COVID that increased poverty, increase the conditions of security of people, and give more possibilities for those armed groups to generate more violence and displacement in our territories. And COVID, for the government didn't pay any attention at all to the most deprived sectors of this country. So finally this year, in 2019, we had to have a strike also. It was less days, but it was also a strike because the same reason. There was a tax policy that the government put on place. And what from 2019 to today is that taxing didn't help poor people. As a matter of fact, making more difficult for impoverished people, and was favoring the banks and the private sector. So when the government comes with this new reform, people, as Ajamu said, has enough. We have enough in our territories with the violence, with the negation of all, with the peace accord, the agreements that we have had through many different other mobilizations. In 2007, a whole city, Buenaventura, which is the main port in this country, also mobilized and strike for 21 days and closed and shut down that port for 21 days. Agreements from that mobilization haven't been fulfilled. And what we have today, we have our territories encroached by armed groups, internal displacement again is happening. This government completely tied to, as has been always, to the policies of the United States, threatening to reinitiate this policies of eradication of coca that are for people and for the territories, increasing the conditions of impoverishment of people. You know, we have over 5 million of small business that were broke, and then no education, no health, no vaccinations, no opportunities for young people. So that is the whole context of that have us today, or more than 45 days on a strike. Now, I will add to this, just to end here this part, that we are also in a country that is effectively the main ally of the United States in this region. And what we have seen also from all this process of alliance with the United States is billions of dollars put on military operations, military assistance, intelligence that is implemented against human rights defenders, against leaders, right? And no a penny for economic growth, for economic help to people. So when the policies that the government want to put in place come, we link all these elements, the relationships with the United States, the enormous amount of money that is put in the military, that is put in the private sector, and the enormous increase of impoverishment and their conditions of people. And that has keep us on the streets. 70-80% of the people holding those strikes are young people. That is people that has no hope. They don't have education, they don't have jobs, they don't have an occupation, they don't have any opportunities. And the only thing that they have is these points of resistance. So that's a little bit of that context also.
Now, I wanted, if you don't mind, I wanted to ask you guys a question actually about that, about the young people. Earlier today, so again, when I'm making these videos, when I'm doing the research for the shows, because I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I know everything about every topic we have on. This is why we go out of our way to try to get experts on the show. And I didn't know that much about Colombia. I had done a lot of research about Colombia for another show, but more about the cartel side of Colombia, because we were talking about Mexico and cartels and the new government out there. And in doing this research for the contemporary issue in Colombia with these strikes, I'm seeing some videos. Vice did a couple stories recently where they were in Cali covering a lot of the protests. And I called Pascal. He'll tell you earlier, maybe about 2-3 hours early before the show. And a lot of times when you talk about the situation of the left or the non-existent left, especially in the States, it can get very depressing. And in watching and reading about a lot of these uprisings, I was getting somewhat hopeful because of the spirit of these young people. Hopeful in the sense of the spirit, you know, the conditions and what's going on with them is pretty frightening. As far as the government pushback with actually shooting people in the street, and they were actually showing the huge projectiles they were shooting people with, and they were even shooting doctors and showing how they're using like very, very, very like deadly tear gas. And what is the feeling in Colombia with this youthful movement? Because from what this is just what I'm seeing from edited news footage, is that even the older people are saying, we want to get behind these young people that are out here in the streets. They're in the front lines, and they were even saying that they had stopped some of the gang violence, even in some of these areas that were pretty bad. Oh, damn it. That was me. I did that. Sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Good question. But let me get at this way. And of course, Charo will do her thing. Mm-hmm. First, let's if you have that link or someone has that link to that Vice piece, people may have issues with Vice. That piece they did here in Cali was really, really good because it does capture the spirit of resistance with these young folks. And you'll see in that part of the story of the strike that we have been trying to elevate, and that is that Colombia has Black folks, okay? And in fact, we need to probably even say this because some people may not even know this, and that's all right, because,
third most, right?
The third largest population of African people outside of Africa. You got Brazil number one, Black folks in the U.S. number two, and Colombia number three. Okay, so part of what happened with the strike and with the repression, the most intensifying part of the repression was taking place in those communities that were largely Afro-Colombian. Okay, so that piece kind of captures some of that the frontline defense at these points of resistance have been young people. Okay, the people who have been marginalized, the people who, as Charo said, who have no vision. I mean, no future as they see it, beyond their commitment that things cannot continue as they are today. Okay, so they do have a vision, a sense that they understand that there has to be fundamental structural change in this country if they're going to have a future for themselves. Okay, that's the first thing. Second, I think people may not have heard, so I'm going to say it again. We talk about the Afro-Colombian presence, and we do this because it's important people know that, because there's a spirit of resistance and of fighting example here that people need to understand and know about. Charo talked about the strike that took place, or the action that took place in Buenaventura, a city that's like 95% Black. I don't know if people caught this, that the folks rose up in that city. They held that city for 21 days.
Wow.
I'm gonna say it again. They took a city, one of the most important cities in the country, and they held it for 21 days, demanding that if the government wanted to give it up, or wanted them to give it up, that they had to come right. And the government didn't want to negotiate with them either. And that's why there was running battles every night. They were trying, because the port city, this is the major port in Colombia. And when they shut that port down, basically nothing moved. So what the authorities were trying to do, they'll try to run trucks out from the port through the city and try to get them out, and that's where the battles took place. 21 days. So this goes to the other point. We talk about the non-existent left. Let's be clear. We ain't talking about here in the global South.
Yeah.
We talking about the North and this social imperialist, soft, petty bourgeois, what I call the latte left in the U.S. and in Western Europe. Okay, and that's a whole nother conversation. Talk about why the left in North America and Europe has gotten so corrupted, if you will. Okay, but here in the global South, where you can't afford illusions, there's a left. That's a strong left, as a matter of fact. So this is what we have to make sure people are aware of. That basically, this fight here is a fight that's intensifying. It has that historical context we talked about, the fact that you had this war in this country, and a disproportionate number of the people who were impacted were African people, and people have enough sophistication to know that the only way they're going to be able to win control of their territories. When we talk about Black folks in Colombia, we're not talking about just an urban population. We're talking about people who still occupy significant. One won from the government was a recognition that one, they are a people, and then secondly, they had a right to title for their historic territories. Okay, and it's in the Constitution. Now, you know, it has been completely implemented, and these armed groups and groups associated with the government have been actively trying to push Black people off their land. They're sitting on top of, you know, valuable territory, you know, but that's been the terms of the resistance, the terms of the struggle here in this country. And we need to know that is an important struggle here in Colombia for many reasons.
And that's what I wanted to get at, because there was a piece I believe Charo sent us that I believe she wrote, and I had some quotes highlighted on my iPad, which my son has stolen as he learns how to use the pot. I'm not going to disturb that training. That being said, there's some gist of it that we can get to. We probably need to, and we're going to have to be brief because of time, and we could do a series of episodes on the Civil War that happened in Colombia. Do you guys want to give a little bit of context on that conflict that lasted for what, 60 years?
Oh, the internal armed conflict. I was counting days to see which of those.
Because you write about the treaty, which I think is so fascinating. The things that were asked for in that treaty, the giving the indigenous back their lands, giving Afro Colombians back their lands, and also the rights for the indigenous and Afro Colombians, as well as the queer LGBTQ community, recognizing them as well. I found that fascinating. But first, you know, to understand the compromise, you have to understand the conflict. So if you guys want to try to give the abridged version of that Civil War.
I defer to Charo.
Well, 50 years of this so-called internal armed conflict, we had to collect, after some period of time, just war against people, and we descendants were at the center of. It started with late 40s with the assassination of a politician, Gaitan, that was very, very popular and was kind of the force that represented the interest of campesino people in Colombia. Mm-hmm. And he was assassinated, was killed because of precisely that that hope that represented for campesino people. You know, Colombia is a country where 70% of its area is rural. It's a very rural country. Now, because of displacement, most people is in cities, but still are these vast areas of, rural areas. And on those days, it was a country. So that, I'm going to be brief because it's a long story. A lot to unpack. And I want to get into the other things that you mentioned. This assassination create they give the space for the creation of FARC. I won't be able to translate this in English, but anyway. FARC is the oldest guerrilla in the country and was born in this context. In start with campesino people. Tiro Fijo, or the as was known, the main leader of was a campesino. Mm-hmm. With the whole motion between 50s and 60s of the raise up of the many revolutionary groups that were created, came the form of other guerrilla groups like ELN that still exist today. The presence of guerrilla groups was the consolidation of what had called the internal armed conflict. That internal armed conflict went through that period to 2000. In 1991, Colombia amended the constitution. There were changes in the constitution, and as when Colombia declared itself pluri-ethnic, and we gained the recognition as people, the right to get collective title of our lands, and other series of recognitions and rights that in terms of education and development that we push for up to today. And I mentioned 1991 because it's a very important period of also kind of civil society raise up, civil society active participation. These changes of the constitution open up many doors for the civil society to be very active, and this create opportunities for people to start knowing their rights and fighting for them. And of course, this start being seen by the government as a problem. And the paramilitary forces were created. Paramilitary forces came under the tenure of Álvaro Uribe Vélez in 2000, and they were active up to 2005, formally active until 2005. Apparently, they demobilized in 2005. But in that period, from 2000, late 90s, really very concentrated in 2000 up to 2005, paramilitaries start a war against guerrilla groups, in this so-called war against terrorism. And this is when United States, that has been always present in the life of Colombia, in the politics of Colombia, and also in the killings and violence in Colombia, came with the policy called Plan Colombia. With Plan Colombia and this so-called war against terrorism, the paramilitarism strengthened, linked to the military, which was modernizing and was increasing in military capacity. The United States trained those militaries. The United States had some bases for a period of time in here. And the United States gave over $15 billion on a period of 10 years to Colombia to improve the military capacity. The combination between these elements is what we have today, seen in the territory where mainly Afro-descendant people is the victim of all this collusion of different forms of war. in that period, while we were defending and creating the collective property of land that we have been there for centuries, and defending those collective rights and organizing as people, those some of those waves of conflict came to our territories and concentrated in our territories. That's what made us third of the internal displaced population and the victim, so-called internal armed conflict. Now, when I say that it's so-called internal armed conflict, it's because what was initially a clash between government and guerrillas became a clash between forces trying to exert control on territories where we were in the middle. And we became the center of most of those targets. So today, indigenous and Afro-descendant people have become the target of all this war, because it's what it is today. So that's a general and very rushed kind of the different elements of the conflict and the violence that we live today.
I'd like to ask a question. What exactly, if any, has been the difference, if any, between the Trump posture towards Colombia and the Biden posture towards Colombia, and has it provided any type of clarification on the part of the activists in terms of what the United States interests are in any way? Is there any distinction, or is it a continuum of the same old, same old? Does anyone have? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I would answer your question by then posing a question to your audience. When was the last time you heard Biden say something about the massive human rights violations in Colombia?
That would be never.
Exactly. So yes, the U.S. policies in Colombia have been consistent in their reactionary nature through both, through all the administrations, both parties. Okay. In fact, Charo mentioned Plan Colombia, and I hope people caught the fact that this thing called Plan Colombia was a U.S. program to provide assistance to Colombia in their anti-narcotic battle, supposedly. But basically, it was a plan to prop up the Colombian military in order to wage war against the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, and the other armed groups. And they pumped billions of dollars into the country to, in fact, do that, with the consequence being an intensification of the conflict and more violence, death, and displacement for everyone, but in particular for indigenous folks and Afro-Colombian people specifically. So Biden brags about the fact, and it's true, that when he was in the Senate, he was one of the architects of Plan Colombia. Okay? And we remember now, both parties, in particular liberals, are more adamantly anti-communist than even the so-called Republicans, okay? So he brags about the fact he was one of the architects of Plan Colombia. So Plan Colombia propped up the military capacity of the Colombian authorities and their paramilitary elements. Plan Colombia resulted in 8 U.S. bases here in the country. Plan Colombia created the special police forces, ESMAD, ESMAD, that you all might have seen in the videos. Those are the ones dressed in black who look like Star Wars soldiers, but instead of the attire being white, is black, okay? This unit was created out of Plan Colombia and trained by U.S. authorities. So it's been consistent because the U.S. is a white supremacist, right-wing state. And it is in alignment with all of the other right-wing states in Latin America and throughout the world. So it's been absolutely consistent. The only slight difference is that the rhetoric of the Obama administration and now Biden, in terms of they don't come out openly like how Donald Trump may have done to give the green light, full green light to the Colombian authorities to ferociously and brutally put down the rebellion. That's the only slight difference.
Now, I do want to bring up, there's a question that someone continuously asked. They want to know how Charo feels about, or felt, he's passed on for some time now, Hugo Chavez.
Yes.
She looked like they had beef.
Well, how I felt.
I know it's a complicated question. The
question was that how do you feel about the presidency of Hugo Chavez and the role of Afro-descended, Afro-Latino people in South America in the rising anti-imperialist movements and the anti-colonial movements in the area with the rise of the left in general? Do you see that as a sign of hope? Are there internal contradictions? Are there things you want to elaborate on? Both of you can interject if you'd like.
Okay. Well, I think that the presidency of Hugo Chavez was very significant for the region and for Colombia. You know that Colombia is and that's why is keep as the main ally and for the United States, because it's like right in the middle, right, passing from the United States to Latin America. And Hugo Chavez in that period of his presence and presidency was very, very important for the region. There was, the period where it was the promise of perhaps recuperating the region from the headwinds and the regimes that were previously have been holding the whole Latin America, and like a possible leadership among other countries like Colombia and Ecuador to put like a certain halt to the imperialist interests of the United States and the force that was growing up in the region. So, I think that for many of us that was an important gain, very important time and opportunity, and he was very popular, and for some may seem populist.
See that? I can see that.
Right, which is in many cases what really today, if someone gain the interest of people that is holding the strikes, will be called populist. But as long as it's able to ignite and be able to make grow that people looking for the changes that we are looking here, maybe populist, but it's going somewhere with that. There's many things to talk about or say around that. There are contradictions, and I wanted to mention before when Ajamu was talking about the striking the young people in Cali and how, Cali is a very important black city in the region. The presence of black people in the Bolivarian movement was also and has been very, very important. However, I personally have to say that, like everywhere else, there are many contradictions about the racial disparity inequalities that we have in these countries. and a little bit of lack of recognition of the importance that Afro-descendant Black people plays on this political process of transformations and revolutions, the role that we have played historically, the role that we can play, particularly for people that in countries like Colombia or Venezuela still hold significant areas of land, of territories. Mm-hmm. So there are certain contradictions that we can see, and I can see in those processes where having significance of Black or Afro-descendant African is not the racial component of the realities, the racial component of transformation solution is not completely visible and fully present. I will leave it there, but
I would.
Ajamu, do you want to carry this through?
Yeah, I'll just jump in very briefly and build off of that and say that and echo what Charo said in terms of the importance of the Venezuelan project. When we think about politics here in the global South, it is less the personalities and more so the social forces and classes that are in play. Mm-hmm. And it's quite clear that for Latin America transformation, for the revolutionary process and the struggle for socialism in this region, Venezuela was and is absolutely critical. Okay, mm-hmm. And that's why the U.S. has devoted so much time and attention to attempting to undermine that process. In fact, I was one of the ones that was very, very concerned about the lack of preparation, knowing that as the U.S. was bogged down in the so-called Middle East, that they had on their list to really begin to intensify the process of undermining Venezuela. And I knew that was coming. And as soon as Chavez died, that's when they really unleashed. And there was always undermining or attempting to Venezuela.
I mean, they attempted a coup in, was it 2002?
Yes. Yeah. So it intensified, though, really after Chavez died. And the next year, the Obama administration declared that Venezuela was a unique and extraordinary threat to U.S. national security that allowed them to intensify the sanctions and everything. Yeah.
And they used the petro diplomacy to basically shut it down as well, which was the nail in the coffin.
Right.
Because the Petro Caribe was such an important program for Haiti, for Cuba,
mm-hmm.
So Venezuela, Cuba. Oil going to those countries and helping with their economies. And in fact, it was one of the issues that helped to spark part of the resistance that we see unfolding in Haiti today. So Venezuela is key, but as Charo said too, we have other issues too that still has to be dealt with here in the region in terms of a sort of mechanical understanding of race. Theoretically, there's some real underdevelopment in terms of what that really means and how that has actually even expressed itself here in Latin America. So yeah, but again, the anti-imperialist movement here in Latin America has been key and being galvanized by the Bolivarian process out of Venezuela.
Someone asked a very crucial question that we should ask: is that what are the demands of the actual activists in Colombia?
Well, that's a good question, but it is of demands because on one hand is the coordination committee, the initial people that called for this was a collective or coalition of union sector Months of this particular set of people was focused on bringing down some of the reforms that the government wanted to develop. One was taxes, but the other was on health, on education. So that was a set of the points of the demands to write these tax reforms, which was which happened. The support and the defense of the productive sector, agropecuary sector, the campesino sector, the artisanal sector, a kind of minimum wage subsidizing for everybody, for poor people, which will be like about 900,000 pesos, a little bit over, which is around $300 per month. That's the minimum wage here. The zero tuition for the students at university don't have, so they don't have to pay initial subscription. No, what is the word for that? Subscription or tuition. And some demands around non-discrimination on gender, race, and diverse sexuality, the no privatization, and no forced eradication of coca, the aspersion of these chemicals that they used during the periods of Plan Colombia, that is bad even in the United States, with the glyphosate or glyphosate, I don't know how to say in English. The transportation sector that has other demands, but then is that after being up front, and these front lines, the first lines, being held in the strike, have been organizing in common, and also having a set of demands. Some of those demands, or most of the demands, are focused on the situation, the impoverishment of poverty, and then corruption, education, and also which was meant for the committee, the national coordination, the ending the violent repression by police and this special force. Part of the demand was really that force is dismantled, and that there is no repression for the mobilization, social civil disobedience. Obviously, is not going to comply with that, but those are the kind of the and main demands from the different sectors. The young people is very focused on corruption, and removing some of the limitations on age for vote. There is a very strong campaign now for young people to vote in popular vote, because people is looking for this significant change.
Well, on that note, we have hit the hour mark. And as much as I love the people that watch and support this show, I just can't keep giving them all this shit for free. I'm joking. But seriously, I mean, we only have a limited amount of time, and I'm trying to keep the 2-year-old from busting in the door again. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you guys so much for making this show happen. Didn't know how to really tackle the topic because I think, again, I don't want to say complex. It is complex, but it's just deep because you really have to understand the history of Colombia. You have to understand the history of the United States involvement in Colombia.
In the region.
You have to understand Chiquita Banana. We didn't even get into Chiquita Banana and that whole chestnut, which we can get into a little bit in the bonus half. But again, I started that clip that I made with Kennedy because the Kennedy administration was part of the administration that really wanted to come in and even started to push back because around his 62, around his first term, you have what is it called again, Pascal? The Second Vatican
II.
Yeah. Where the US is like, look, this liberation theology can't be giving these leftists God on their side. And you have the murdered priests. I think it's like 80 priests that's been killed in the last few years throughout Latin America. And of course, Father Romero in El Salvador maybe being the most notable. But again, to not understand this history, there's some people said, Bevan's book, The Jakarta Method, is good. DJ Prashad has a good book, Washington Bullets, that talks about, which is primarily about the U.S. involvement in Latin America, the anti-communism involvement in Latin America. But what I see going on right here, this pushback I see with the young people, it actually, I hope I don't sound like a simp, but it actually put like tears in my eyes to see this level of rebellion. Because at one point, a young man says, we can protest for a day, but they don't care. He says, we can yell at the president, but they don't care. But if we don't work and we shut down industry, then they have to listen to us. Mm-hmm. And I was so moved by that because I was with, I'll get into it in the bonus half. We'll take a deeper dive into, as Pascal says, we don't have a left. We have a bunch of leftists.
In America, for sure.
Was that a good Pascal impersonation?
Charo, will you be joining us in the bonus half, or will it just be Ajamu? Who will both of you be able to come, or will this be Ajamu? Don't be shy.
Well, I think Charo needs to. She doesn't want to say no, but I know Charo has a whole lot she's got to do. So I volunteered. Y'all stuck with me. Okay, I'm sorry.
Hey,
what can I say?
No, it's good. No, John, we're gonna have a broad conversation because I want to hear some tea. I want to hear more latte left attacks.
You just went. That's about to be the hashtag of the day right now. Everybody's on the chat talking about latte leftists. Light-skinned people is in trouble right now. That's all I got to say. Sean King, they're coming for you. So thank you guys for taking the time.
We're going to send you a link to the next segment via email. And you will sign on the same way. You might get the email from Jason or me or both. All right. So either way, it's going to be the same way you sign on to this one, and we will see you in the next segment. Charo, Sister Charo, thank you so much for coming on and really elucidating and clarifying the situation in Colombia for us and for our audience. We would love to have you both on again, particularly you, if we need further clarification to talk about these developments as they progress. Thank you very much, Ajamu. Thank you for the kind words you had for our program. This is Revolution Podcast. We're trying our best to live up to the best of the Black radical tradition and the Black revolutionary tradition. And, you know, we appreciate having guests like yourselves. So please, anytime you all feel the need to have an audience to discuss these things, call on us to do so, and we will make ourselves available at the earliest convenience.
We'll figure it out. That's what I always say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I do.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure and honor to be in your program. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, as I said earlier, and I'm very, very happy to if you invite me.
Thank you. We will send you links to the show tonight so you can disperse in your networks. But first, Ajamu, look for the link to the bonus Patreon half.
Okay, so thank you guys very much for coming on. I appreciate you. And I do also want to add a side note to Brother Baraka. Pascal always speaks of you in a very high regard. Pascal has been a bit of a mentor to me. I'm not going to sit here and lie and act like he hasn't been, but he always brings up the Black Agenda Report hierarchy that helped him along the way. The late Bruce Dixon going forward, and he brings up your name as well. So I do want to put that out there. And on that note, we are out.